Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Tom Woods Show. It's episode 2545, and I'm very glad to be joined today by Erick Brimen, who is founder, chairman, and CEO of what's the official company name?
Prospera. The
It is
official
Prospera,
legal
just like-
name is Honduras Prospera Inc., but the doing business is Prospera.
Prospera. Okay. Now, I got to know, not about you individually, whom you and I have never met before, but about this project just from reading about it here and there, usually from sympathetic sources, by the way. And as it happens, I presume by now folks listening know that I'm hosting a cruise in very early 2025, tomwoodscruise.com, and that I said the first 50 people to sign up are going to have the option, at least, to go on an excursion with me when the ship docks in Honduras, and we're going to go visit Prospera and spend maybe half a day there, because Prospera is, well, describe it to us. Why would this be of particular interest to listeners of this show, do you think?
Well, because it's a platform to deploy free market economics in reality as a tool which to drive economic development. And so the vision and what we're doing is to build city-scale projects inside of enhanced special economic zones negotiated with host nations, which enable the city to run with a separate legal and regulatory environment optimized for entrepreneurship, enterprising, and with minimal friction. So free market capitalism in its best sense.
And how long have you been in existence?
Well, depends when you start to measure. The legal entity was created, if I remember correctly, in 2015 or thereabouts. But after a few years of working with the Honduran government, the charter for the ZEDE was granted in late 2017. And then the legal and regulatory frameworks that we were proposing were approved in late 2019. We broke ground starting to build actual buildings in mid-2020, in the middle of the pandemic.
Okay. Let's try to help people understand exactly how Prospera interacts with, or coexists with the government of Honduras. So are there laws of Honduras that apply there or don't apply there, or is the regulatory framework different? And if so, how is it different?
Yeah, so perhaps we got to separate in two dimensions. There is Prospera, the private company that entered in effect into a public-private partnership with the government of Honduras. And then there's Prospera ZEDE, which is the special economic zone, which is in effect a public entity. It's a political subdivision of the state of Honduras. It's a governmental entity. It's like a municipal corporation. So the municipal corporation is a government. It's a local government. It's a Honduran government. It's headed by a Honduran, has to be a natural-born Honduran citizen. And what the Honduran Constitution has done is that it has empowered that local government with a tremendous amount of, let's say, powers at the expense of other agencies and other federal level parts of the Honduran government. And so anything that is incorporated, any land that's incorporated into this jurisdiction is governed by Prospera ZEDE on a day-to-day basis. The rules that apply are specific to Prospera ZEDE. And then the rest of the Honduran government plays more of a supervisory role, not an administrative role.
Okay.
The closest thing out there today to what we're doing here, Tom, is Hong Kong. Okay, Hong Kong, not maybe today, but the way it was, say, 50 years ago. And the next closest is Dubai, but in particular, the DIFC. And so in both cases, and let's talk about Hong Kong for a minute, Hong Kong was legally part of China all along, but it had a separate legal system. It was, one country, two systems. That's what was envisioned with the Zayed regime in Honduras. And in the case of Dubai, the DIFC in particular, it's part of the Dubai Emirates, which is in turn part of the UAE. But the DIFC, unlike the rest of Dubai and the rest of the Emirates, runs on common law, has Anglo-Saxon rules and standards, has a separate judicial system, has a separate legal parallel system that is international common law, whereas the rest of the country runs on Sharia law. In Honduras, they don't have Sharia, but they do have civil law, and the Prospera Zayed gets to run on common law.
What is the relationship between Prospera and Honduras in Honduras at large with regard to taxation? Are you taxing people and giving money to the Honduran government, and if so, at what level? How does that work?
Yep. The political subdivision of Prospera Zayed, as a municipal corporation, does have taxes. The Constitution granted it exclusive taxing authority within the territory. Of all the taxes that gets collected, 12% at a minimum gets shared off the top with the government, with the rest of the government of Honduras, without any service obligation. So everything that happens within the Zayed has to be operated and funded by and within the Zayed, but of the top, 12% goes to the federal government for various purposes. The type of taxation that applies is very limited, very straightforward. If we would have had our way, perhaps no taxes would have applied, or perhaps only a land value tax would have applied, a la Henry George. However, because we did not want the jurisdiction to be deemed a tax haven, and the International Monetary Fund was very clear, we had to, at a minimum, have a 10% flat income tax. So there is a 10% income tax within the zone. There is, in effect, a 2.5% sales tax. And then there's a 1% land value tax. However, the income tax, for simplification, on corporations, it is applied on a presumed income of 10% of gross revenues. So if you make $100 million, it is presumed that you're making an income of $10 million, and your taxes are going to be 10% of that. So for reporting purposes, all we need really is your gross revenue, and then it's 1% of gross revenues for a corporation. And for individuals, it is presumed that 50% of your gross revenue is your net income. You don't have to worry about deductions or anything. So if you're making $100,000 a year and it's 10% of 50% your presumed income, effectively it's 5% of your gross revenue. So it's a 5% effective income tax for individuals.
In principle, how many people do you think could comfortably live there if let's say, the maximum number? We're talking about the maximum number of people who could comfortably live there.
Within the already incorporated territories, comfortably 100,000 people could live here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I say within the already incorporated territories because the legal system of the Zayed allows for expansion under a voluntary process by which landowners can become incorporated into the jurisdiction. And so in theory, it can grow. But if it stays just within the existing footprint, comfortably 100,000 people.
What does it mean to be an e-resident of Prospera?
Okay. An e-resident means that you have gone through the online platform, you have been vetted, you have gone through a KYC process, you have accepted the terms and conditions of operating legally within the jurisdiction when you do business as an e-resident. And then you also acquire certain rights of access to the jurisdiction, both virtually and physically. You can go beyond that to also be a physical resident. You pay a little bit more, but then you can have permanence locally. You can own property, and you can create legal entities.
Suppose I have a dispute with somebody while I'm living there, with another resident. How is that dispute resolved?
Yeah. Well, you would both have had to at least be e-residents. within the terms of being an e-resident, you would have accepted not only the Roatan Common Law Code, is what is called the legal system that Prospera has adopted, but you would have also adopted as a default to use the Prospera Arbitration Center to resolve disputes. You can, of course, at any given contract, opt out of it and use anything else, including a court. But if not, then the Prospera Arbitration Center is what applies. So if you have a dispute, that's where it would end up. The arbitration center is set up as an enhanced form of an arbitration center. It's not just a typical commercial arbitration center. It is the default dispute resolution forum for all things, including matters that involve public law, torts, the environment, labor, So you would end up there. The matter would be heard and resolved. The default is for the proceedings to be public and precedent setting, which is the opposite of what normally happens with an arbitration center. But it is done so by default because in a common law system, we want the decisions to be to create precedent. Okay? And for the system then to evolve, we curated an initial set of rules under the Roatan Common Law Code. But following the tradition of common law, we want decisions by judges to be precedent setting. However, if it's a commercial dispute, you can pay for it to remain private and confidential, and then it would be just like any other arbitration case. When it comes to the resolution of the arbitration center, it carries weight internationally through the New York Convention. It's recognized as such. Obviously, it can be enforced within the jurisdiction where all of the institutions are aligned to that, including the private property registry, the corporate registry, etc. But if you happen to enter into a dispute and you are the beneficiary of an award against somebody that maybe does not have assets in the jurisdiction, but does have assets, let's say in Germany or the US or Panama or Colombia, the vast majority of the countries around the world are parties to the New York Convention, which means that you can take your Prospera Arbitration Award to those countries and then record it and execute against it in whatever assets they might have there. So it's just as good as a court resolution, and perhaps I would argue even better because it's already recognized through the New York Convention.
I have a very smart wife, and I have a wife who really cares about my health. She says, I want to keep you around as long as possible. So when she tells me to do something, I more or less do it. For example, absolutely true story. You can check this with her if you come to our Christmas party this year. One day she starts handing me what are called Super Beets Heart Chews. And every day she would hand me one and say, you should consume one of these a day. And so they're individually wrapped. They're super convenient. So I would do it. And then I looked at the package that she's getting them from, and I realized, wait a minute, these people are my newest sponsor. So it worked out really great. Well, Super Beets Heart Chews give you a convenient, delicious, plant-based way to support healthy blood pressure and circulation. And you can enjoy a heart-healthy boost without relying on stimulants. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the unique antioxidant compound in Super Beets is clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. So in addition to my gym regimen and my diet, it's nice to know I'm doing something good for myself every day. And what's more, they give you heart-healthy energy without the crash. Remember, no stimulants, no artificial sweeteners or colors. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews on all bundles and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using code WOODS. That's getsuperbeets.com, code WOODS. Now, you gave the figure of 100,000, but right now the number of people physically living there is quite small. So what is standing between the current population and reaching the potential of 100,000? What needs to happen, and what are you doing to help make that happen?
It's a dance between demand and supply. On the demand side, we have been working on creating a very powerful value proposition for people and businesses in particular to set up within the jurisdiction. There are many reasons and many ways in which companies and individuals can benefit from being in a place like Prospera and Roatan. But one of the niches that we've identified has a very obvious comparative advantages in the healthcare space. Healthcare is extremely regulated. and many a times for no good reason. So we have recently found what they say a product market fit within healthcare, and in particular healthcare innovation. So part of it is demand driven. The other part, and I would say the biggest bottleneck in our case, has been the supply side. So building buildings. We started building just a few years ago in the grand scheme of things when it comes to being in the middle of COVID. And obviously buildings require capital and require time and require effort. So we are at a moment in time where we are several hundred people in and starting to enroll additional developers to come and build spaces for people to come and live in and operate out of, office, recreation, etc. We already have a school inside. We got offices. We got apartments. We got villas. We have a hotel. We got a beach club. We got a golf course. I mean, we've been building a lot, but it takes a while.
Why Honduras in particular? Do you come from Honduras?
No, I was born in Venezuela, but we're in Honduras because of all the countries in the world, in this hemisphere at least, it's the country that had the best, the most suitable legal infrastructure so as to create this city-scale project with a differentiated legal system, just like Hong Kong had against China. Back in 2009, when the country was going through a very complicated period of time in the middle of changing two governments with arguably a coup. They went into deep recession and they got desperate and wise, and they were trying to figure out how to jolt the economy back into prosperity. And one of the things that they attempted were these enhanced special economic zones. It took several attempts through the Congress, very much convincing with the Supreme Court, but ultimately in 2013, the law passed Congress. It had to reform the Constitution. And it wasn't until about 2015 when the Supreme Court finally had blessed it, say, for the third time. And that's when we started to become involved in late 15, early 2016. And it was a very attractive legal system. Now, from my side, personally, I had been thinking about these concepts since college. The idea of market forces to solve social problems and questioning why the institutionality of government had to be structured the way it had evolved with all sorts of conflicts, public choice theory issues, etc. And it had dawned on me for a while now that if you could inject entrepreneurialism, market forces, competition, the profit motive in how the services of government were structured, that, you would change everything because the incentives change everything. And so before we became involved with Honduras, I had started a partnership with my alma mater, which is Babson College, in the form of an investment vehicle to help support the university, export the concept of entrepreneurship at city scale. We were calling it enterprise cities at the time. So we had been looking at various parts of the world, signed MOUs with various countries, but candidly, Honduras is the one that created the best legal framework of them all. So they invited us to come and work with them to create the project, and here we are.
To what extent would you say ordinary Hondurans are aware of your existence, and if they are aware of it, well, what do they think about it?
The level of awareness is quite high, and the vast majority of the people are supportive of what we are intending to do as per independent polls. Now, if you were to listen to just the politicians, you get a different story. But independent polls would show that over 60, if not 70% of the population think favorably of us as a platform that generates employment opportunities for them.
I guess we have to talk about an uncomfortable subject here, which is what exactly right now, or how exactly right now would you describe the nature of your relationship with the Honduran government? I mean, is it chilly?
So there are elements of the current administration that are radical, left-leaning, and who perhaps don't have such a high esteem of property rights and long-term legal contracts, and who fundamentally oppose the things we stand for insofar as we stand for free markets, for decentralizing power. And if they could have it their way, I think the Zetas would have never been created and we would be dismantled. Because we are legally constituted and have long-term legal stability contracts with the highest level of protection, including international treaties with the US, with Kuwait, with Honduras, and because we're complying with our commitments, an administration can't just simply decide that those contracts no longer apply, despite the politics associated with it. So we have been in a fairly contentious relationship with some of the more radical elements in government, to the point where we have seen the necessity to file an international arbitration claim against the state of Honduras for not honoring its commitments and threatening to violate them further. At this point, the case has been received within ICSID, which is the dispute resolution part of the World Bank. We're represented by White & Case, which is perhaps the best firm in the world to deal with investor-state disputes. Honduras is participating in the dispute, and it's an international arbitration. They have caused a lot of harm already just because of their rhetorical attacks and because of not complying with certain service level agreements that they're party to, including customs services, so we can import and export goods with the applicable benefits. And also, they've made it really hard for local finance to participate. Banks are under threat that if they provide services to Prospera registered entities, they might have issues with a national regulator. So it's been far from ideal. We could have been 10 times, if not more, further along, which means we would have generated 10 times, if not more, jobs. We would have brought 10 times, if not more, foreign direct investment. So it's really a suboptimal situation for all parties involved. But we charge on. We know that what we're doing is good, is proper, it's worth it, and it's legal. So despite the already embedded difficulties of doing something of this magnitude, we have pushed through any of the political uncertainties, and we are doing very well, all things considered.
There was a long article about you guys in the New York Times a little over a week ago, I think now. And I know you guys weren't necessarily happy with it. And, it's not surprising. The New York Times is not going to be favorable to you because they have a certain idea of what proper governance looks like, and you are not it. So not surprising. But what exactly was your objection to the way Prospera was portrayed?
Well, starting with the headline, right? Private city, I forget, it's about to go bust or something on those lines. It's very biased. I think that they were trying really, really hard to find any little thing that they could create controversy from. And my biggest thing against the article and the effort is that if they had spent just an iota of the effort that they spent trying to find the negative in just looking at the facts, any honest journalist would not be able to help themselves but to write an extremely positive article, especially if what they're interested in is about lifting people up, and if they supposedly care about poverty, or if they care about indigenous people, like any of these things that they claim to care about. Any real effort at understanding what we are doing and what we stand for would have resulted in a very favorable article. Instead, I guess they feel the need to create controversy. Obviously, they need to pander to whoever they're trying to get to read the Times these days. And so it was a missed opportunity, because I think a more factual article would have enabled the project to attract even more support and have the positive effect that it's intended to have with not just investors or businesses, but importantly, the local population. This is something that most people don't realize, but part of the deal with the Honduran government is that 90% of laborers have to be Honduran. So the more this project grows, the more employment opportunities there are for Hondurans, as well as better living conditions and all sorts of things. So us doing well equals more Hondurans doing great.
I live in the United States, as you know, and our government feels morally entitled to get involved in any dispute whatsoever anywhere in the world. And I wonder if there's anybody at any level of the U.S. government who has had anything to say about the situation. Have they taken note of the situation with Prospera?
Yes, they have. And frankly, it's been positively surprising to me that certain elements within the U.S. government have been very supportive. Not all elements, especially in Congress, you have, radicals on both sides of the spectrum, and the Elizabeth Warrens of the world have written letters about how concerned she is that we have such a big arbitration claim against the government of Honduras, without mentioning that it's because they're violating the agreement. But aside from that, I would say with the local embassy here, we've generally received a good audience. In the beginning, they were skeptical, but the more that they have interacted with us, we are a U.S. firm, we are U.S. citizens by and large. I think they've come to realize that what we're doing is, in fact, the best possible solution to issues that the U.S. government cares about, like the migration crisis, illegal trade of narcotics, and other things that emanate from desperation and poverty. So we have had quite a bit of support from, let's say, the official channels, and I think from other channels as well. I'll leave it at that.
All right. So now just back to some curiosity-based questions. Do you provide private security services there?
Yes. Inside of the city projects, security is done primarily through a private company that is hired to provide general security. The ZEDE, as a local government, has policing powers and obligations. And so when and if there's a crime committed, then they can get called upon. But instead of having a standing police force, the security company, any security company, can be deputized under the supervision of the chief of police to support any policing efforts, including arrests.
Folks, as we survey American society, it is not easy to settle on the most broken thing about it. But certainly in the running, we could say, is American healthcare and American medical insurance. American health insurance is frustrating and expensive. Claims denials are becoming more common all the time. And let me take a wild guess. Probably that Affordable Care Act did not make your care more affordable. Well, that's why CrowdHealth was created. It's not health insurance. It's a better way to pay for healthcare through crowdfunding. Because let's face it, your insurance policy is full of unpleasant surprises. Your premiums are going up every year. CrowdHealth is doing things differently. For $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you will get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more. And you don't have to worry about doctors' networks. So let CrowdHealth help with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months. Go to joincrowdhealth.com/woods. CrowdHealth is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com/woods. That's joincrowdhealth.com/woods. Is the purpose of Prospera to attract people from around the world by giving them favorable conditions more than it is to attract native Hondurans, or is it equally? Is it aimed at equally at both?
It's a symbiotic relationship. Our commitment here is to create prosperity. You cannot create prosperity if you don't create wealth and jobs. But jobs are not created out of thin air, and it's neither government officials nor, in this case, single planners of a city. The only capacity of job creation comes from entrepreneurs in pursuit of sustainable wealth creation. So we have to cater to both. We cater to entrepreneurs from anywhere in the world. They are the engine of the economy we're building. And then, of course, we also cater to Hondurans entrepreneurs, but also primarily those that can be employed to support those entrepreneurs in pursuit of all sorts of projects. And what has been surprising to me personally, I must admit, is how much potential these Hondurans really have, especially the younger Hondurans. And I guess if you do the math in retrospect, it shouldn't be surprising. Honduras is not known as a country where, that prints Nobel laureates. However, they have almost 10 million people, and 100,000 is a very small percentage of that. And especially right now, when we are at less than 1,000 people, it's a tiny fraction. So out of 10 million people, 0.0001% of the population, you can really grab onto people that are phenomenal. And so some of these very advanced companies doing, let's say, gene therapies or biotech innovations have a lot of Hondurans employed. It is also obviously the case that you have laborers, whether it's in the construction industry or service industry, that have a bunch of Hondurans, but Hondurans are employed at every level of the value chain at this stage. And at some point, undoubtedly, I think we're going to run out of, let's say, the already existing super advanced engineering talent. But that's fine, because part of our vision includes investing in education and helping develop the local talent as a way to invest in the future needs of our city project. So we already have a K through 12 school. We're working to partner with universities right now to set up a mixed campus for masters and then undergrad students. So it's all part of the vision. You got to develop talent, you got to use local talent, and you got to bring the international best entrepreneurs around the world to make it work.
Do you think there's any immediate prospect of positive political change in Honduras that would help you? Or is it likely to stay in this awkward, uncomfortable situation?
I am optimistic, Tom. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But I have good reason to be optimistic. I think that change is hard. Look, I don't want to justify what some of the radical elements in the Honduran government have done, because it's not defendable. But it can be understandable, especially when you don't have the facts in hand and when you hear things that are alarming. But with time, because we've been so dedicated, so passionate, and so serious about what we're doing, I think that some of those myths have been slowly watering away. And the truth of what we're doing is more clear than ever. We're super transparent. We're open to anybody who wants to come visit. I mean, so, and on the other side, the arbitration case has moved very favorably so far. So you have on the positive side of things, we're making progress. We're showing that we are good for the country, for the people. The stick of an arbitration case has evolved, and unless the government of Honduras radically changes its tune, it's going to end up in an unfortunately large penalty for them. Those things coming together, I think, create a space for a settlement, which is what we hope for. We didn't come here to sue a government so that we get paid. We came here to build a vision, to create opportunity, obviously to make a profit. It was a big part of a reason for coming here, but I'm very optimistic that I think cooler heads will prevail. And I think the sweet spot is somewhere perhaps in as little as 6 months, but I think that it won't take more than 24 months to get this issue behind us, and then we can get on with growing at an accelerated pace.
Given that the relationship with the regime is a little strained, how do you appeal to people to come move and work there without insulting the government? Like, you don't want to. I mean, if you were to say something like, "You can come live and work in the cleanest, safest area of the country," that would be taken as an insult, I think, by the Honduran government. What is the case that you make to people for coming there?
Well, maybe I'm being insensitive, but I've never considered that selling the project and promoting it as, the most beautiful part of Honduras is insulting. Maybe because I do really believe it's true. And that's not to put the rest of the country down. It's beautiful in many ways, but we are fortunate to be operating off of the island of Roatan, which when you and others come, you'll see it's already blessed with with a beautiful context. And Hondurans themselves think of Roatan as their crown jewel. It's a beautiful destination. So it's not really insulting to say, come to the most beautiful part of Honduras, because Honduras already believes that. And
Right.
then within Roatan, we have a very unique footprint. It's the only project of its nature here, an embedded mixed community. Because right now it's not a city yet. I mean, it's a city legally, but it's an emerging community, right? It feels more like a resort community for the time being, except that you can see that there's a tall building already. And then when you study the master plan, you can see that there are other tall buildings planned and higher density than a resort community would have. I think for the vast majority of people, Tom, what we're doing is actually exciting. It's positive. It's just a very small minority of radicals that take offense to anything you say. They have a different worldview. And so it doesn't matter what we do or how we say it. They're going to see the negative no matter what. So we just say the truth. Obviously, we take care not to be insulting in a direct way. Like, sometimes libertarians, commit the mistake of just maybe placing too much fault, not just with the institutional government, but with the individual people. And often the individual people, they're good people that they might have the wrong ideas. Obviously, what is it that said that the road to hell is paved with good intentions? So there might be well-intended people, but there's no point in going one-to-one insulting individuals. So we stay away from it. We're focused on value creation, on the optimistic vision that we're creating, and the fact that we're succeeding. Results speak for themselves.
I can imagine some people might wonder as you get larger, is this a territory that will be run more or less by the company, or will people vote, or what will the governance structure look like?
Yeah, no, the government of Prospera Zede is a representative government that abides by the Republican form of government that the Honduran Constitution requires. There's democratic representation. So the government layer itself is very much representative in nature. There is voting. It's just that the role of said governmental layer in the day-to-day lives of people and the economy is extremely limited. And in the dimensions in which it plays a role, it is extremely effective without having to be corrupt nor overbearing. So, and then the private company is separate. The government layer hires a private company to do the day-to-day operations. Private companies run things efficiently. They don't come up with public policy per se by definition. That's what the government layer is for. It comes up with public policy. But then the implementation, the administration thereof is done under contract. This isn't controversial. I mean, it's like what Sandy Springs did. I mean, an increasing number of cities are outsourcing functions to companies that do it for profit and efficiently. So it's in a way not as radical as people would think. It's just, I guess, radical compared to, I don't know what, a non-functioning form of government. But if you compare it to what a functioning government should be, is not that radical. It's I think we're leapfrogging in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, but we're not radically going against some of the foundational principles of how modern civilization is structured, where people are sovereign individuals. Their decisions should matter more than some institution away from where they live. These principles, very classical liberal principles, if you will, is effectively what we are operationalizing. Our innovation is, I would say, twofold. One, I think we have significantly improved the way in which incentives are aligned at every layer of institutions that are involved with ultimately providing governance services. So there is an alignment of incentives because ultimately the more successful the project in generating generalized prosperity, the more profit there is to be distributed amongst individuals that either live here or have invested here and have a say in how things are done, right? That's not something that you have in the current system. There's no connection between good results and bottom line, profit motive. So that's one core innovation. And then the other is that we've been and I'm proud of this because it's taken a lot of work. We've taken a very partnership approach to how we have set things up. Like, we're we can be very passionate. And if you were to sit down at dinner with some of our team or some of our residents, like we can be super passionate about politics as well, and philosophy and morality and all these things, of course. But in the end, we've developed a culture of pragmatism and trying to be a win-all partnership. And because of that approach, this is a confrontational one. Like we defend ourselves. We'll defend ourselves with everything we got, as we're doing now. But in terms of creation, it doesn't need to be confrontational. It's actually partnership. And so we've built upon this public-private partnership model that has been evolving, and we've just taken it up a level to say, hey, instead of just building bridges or roads or airports, why don't we deal with the layer that actually makes the biggest difference, which is governance?
How do people find out more? If their curiosity is piqued about this, where would they go now?
Well, the website's always a great place, which is prospera.co, prospera.co. And then you can follow us on Twitter under prospera.hn or prospera.hn. They can follow me on Twitter too. I'm at Erick Brimen, and I often retweet and everything posts from the project. And then on the website, if they want to learn even more, they can sign up. They can come visit, in person. They can get a Zoom presentation. There are ways online to register. You can get an e-residency. So the website is a great top of funnel way to learn more.
All right. Your last name is Brimen. I just followed you. So
thank you. And Erick is with CK.
Erick is with CK. So I'll have all these links at tomwoods.com/2544, also in the video description. Well, best of luck. I mean, the vision you have is great. The work you're doing is very important. It can be an example to the whole world if only the people who are ruining the world will get out of the way and let you do it. So genuinely, best of luck to you.
Thank you, Tom. We look forward to seeing you here soon.
I'm looking forward to it as well. Thank you so much, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com, and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.